Most quality management or quality engineering initiatives you get involved with will require you to take a perspective of looking at the organization and understanding what the organization is about. And largely, there are three kinds of major initiatives you'll typically get involved in. One is to deal with business strategy and where is the organization going and who are we. Another is process management. How are our processes operating and how do we know we're actually practicing best practices? And the third tends to be on the improvement side. How do we implement change in our organization and maintain control over our processes? Most major quality management initiatives are some combination of these three things. So what I put together here is just the model that I use. It's not an industry standard model. It's just the model that I use to help me sort out and understand what these components are as I go through. On the business strategy side, everything typically starts with vision. What is the vision of the organization and how does the organization translate that vision into mission? That's often a misunderstood level. If we get that one wrong, we tend to misunderstand the entire business and don't plan our quality management strategies appropriately. But it's assuming the organization has a sound vision and a sound mission. Typically in a business strategy session, you'll talk about the long-term goals of the business, something on the order of many, many years of where do we want to go over the next 5 or 10 years. And those get translated into business objectives as you do your tactical planning. So maybe in 1 to 3 years, where do we need to be to achieve the 5-year goal? And those get translated into more detail in terms of critical success factors. What has to be true? What do we have to be able to accomplish to move things forward? So if we're satisfying our CSFs, we're probably meeting our objectives, which means we're probably meeting our goals, which means we are working toward our mission, which means eventually we can achieve our vision. That's how it all ties together. So often as a quality manager, you'll get involved in some level of this model. On the process side, it also starts with vision and mission because that defines who we are as an organization. But we tend to translate the mission into policies, directional statements of who we want to be and what kind of organization we want to be. It might be our policy to be a low-cost provider. It might be our policy to be the highest quality provider. It might be our policy to try to be an engineering-driven firm. So whatever those policies are, it's management's way of saying this is the direction we want to go in. Those get translated into standards and procedures, the standards being the measurable aspect of what we need to achieve to fulfill that policy, and the procedure being how we choose to get that work done. It's not top to bottom. Vision, mission, policy tend to come out of management and the higher levels of the organization. Procedures and standards tend to emerge from workers. When they don't, when we try to drive management procedures and standards from the policy without regard to what people can actually do on the job, we often end up with a mess. But those kinds of process management activities tend to be important for quality management, and many of the organizations you'll work with as a quality engineer or a healthcare systems engineer of some sort will involve dealing with the process management side of quality. The third leg of quality ties back to vision and mission, but it's actually the change side of the pathway. So running improvement programs, setting improvement goals, establishing those goals in terms of quantified metrics within the organization, and coming up with the measures that make up that metric are a key element of what we do. So the challenge is when we're doing one of these three types of programs or a hybrid of those, is how do we put those together? So here's a model that puts it all together. I call it my mission-focused planning framework that includes all three branches of putting things together in kind of a hierarchy as you go through. If I look at that in perspective, I can carve out chunks of that to describe what are typical kinds of programs or processes you'll get involved in as a quality manager or a quality engineer. You've got the balanced scorecard, which really is the bottom two tiers of looking across all of our objectives, all of our standards, and all of our metrics to see how we're doing across the board. A little more narrowly there, the measurement or program dashboard looks at standards and metrics and really allows us to monitor and control a given piece. If you're using statistical process control to monitor and control yourself, you're probably dealing with measurement standard dashboards as you go through. If I use just the yellow tone stuff on the left, that's my business planning. So typically as part of an annual or a quarterly review with management, I might get involved in helping organizations set clearer objectives and critical success factors based on the business goals they've set for themselves. As a quality engineer at the lower level of an organization, I rarely get involved in the top of this model. Management sets the vision, sets the mission, sets policy, and sets goals. So I might critique those things, and if they're not very good, I typically go back to management and try to work and get them clarified. At that point, I'm helping with business strategy, but I'm not necessarily doing what I would call quality management. The far right side, the taller period, the improvement program, is really where our process improvement methodologies are. TQM, Six Sigma, Lean, whatever an ISO program, whatever we want to call them, that setting up of a program to set goals and drive improvement is largely what this is all about as we go through. So there's different ways to look at this model, and chances are if you use the whole model, a given project or a given initiative will use just a piece of the model. But the more of this model that it covers, the more comprehensive the program or project that you're looking at. The 4 key questions, and I take these from Peter Drucker, they're really his questions out of his writings. But the vision, where do we want to go? Where does the organization need to be? What do you want the world to be different like? And then your mission is, why do you exist? If you believe in the vision, why do you exist as you go through? One of my favorite vision statements that I've ever written for an organization was for the National Space Society. People living and working in thriving communities beyond the Earth is what their vision statement was. So when we looked at ourselves as an organization, what contribution can our society make to fulfilling that vision of people living off planet? So the vision and the mission get created by management, but they answer very, very important questions. The goals talk in terms of what we need to do as an organization moving forward, and the policy tends to be, how do we want to behave or how do we want to look? What are our values as we go through? So ideally, you want to put together a quality management plan that both helps the organization meet its goals, but also behaves in such a way that it fulfills the vision, the statements of the policy derivatives that come out of management. So really these 4 boxes, if you get the right answers to these questions, will help you drive a quality management program. Answer these questions incorrectly, and the quality program you create for the organization will often get into trouble. I see a lot of organizational quality programs that get in trouble. When I trace it back, it's often because the mission and the vision of the organization weren't particularly clear or weren't particularly appropriate. For that, I tend to refer people to Peter Drucker's writings, particularly his book, Managing the Nonprofit Organization, which is a great book on the quality criteria for evaluating vision and mission statements in organizations. So coming back to the model, it all fits together in this way in kind of an improvement cycle. You can follow the arrows and you'll see it goes full circle. So from vision to mission to goals to objectives to CSFs, that's the business planning side. But often the CSFs will imply that things need to change in the organization. So that's why that drives our improvement. The improvement program, the improvement goals, the metrics, the measures. Now measures come out of procedures. So if we look at our measures, we know what procedures will be impacted by our improvement program. And our procedures help us fulfill our standards, which correspond to the metrics. So that cycle of improving the metric and identifying an improvement program in terms of its metrics and measures implies that we know the scope of our program in terms of the standards and procedures that need to be modified, and hopefully in such a way that they fulfill our policy and continue to fulfill the mission. So it is in fact a closed loop learning model. You can follow the model all the way through. The weakness in many organizations is that the improvement programs that we do often are not tied back to the business plan. That dotted line is not present. And if you're just picking improvement programs at random or responding to emergencies, you are in fact improving your process capability, you are improving your quality, but you're not really doing strategic quality yet. If you're doing strategic quality, your improvement programs are tied directly as enablers back to your business plan in a full cycle. So don't leave out that dotted line as you go through. Make sure you include it. Make sure that for most, maybe not all, but most of your improvement programs should be focused toward helping your organization fulfill its current business strategy.